And with that, ladies and gentlemen, let's get our very first panel discussion started. We've got a lineup of some amazing stalwart speakers joining in, and it's time to understand in terms of challenges and opportunities when we are focusing on the way ahead. First up, we have with us Devin Narang, who's the Managing Director, India, Sindicatum Renewable Energy Company, Singapore, a leading developer, owner, and operator of clean energy projects in India, Philippines, Indonesia, and Vietnam. And he is also the scion of the Narang Group, one of the oldest industrial groups in India. Joining him, we also have with us Mayra Andrea, President, Indonesia Jordan Business Council, and she comes with years of experience as a consultant in investment and wealth managing, and also comes with keen understanding of organizational and institutional mechanism for government projects. Our next speaker joining in is Mr. Ketan Patel, Managing Director, HP India, and while he's the managing director of HP's India market, comprising India, Bangladesh, and Sri Lanka. As the head of the Indian market, he's responsible for HP's all businesses, including computing, printing, and associated services. With that, let's also move forward and introduce our next speaker. We have with us Benjamin Chua, who's the founder and CEO of Speco, f.k.a. Spic and Span, Singapore. And it's a social enterprise that has provided progressive jobs for more than 300 individuals to date. And under his leadership, the company developed Speco, a special coating that sanitizes and actively protects surfaces. With that, let me also quickly introduce our session moderator, the one who will be extracting insights from all the panelists. We have with us Neeraj Bansal, co-head and chief operating officer, India Global, KPMG in India, and he's a senior partner with more than 23 years of professional experience, who holds a strong relationship with member firms across ASEAN, Hong Kong, and Taiwan. So on that note, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you're all set for our very first panel discussion right here at the conclave. I'd like to hand over the proceedings to Mr. Bansal.
Wonderful. Thanks, Kavya, for that. So good evening, everyone. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome our audience here at the 6th edition of ET Asia Conclave. And I also extend my warm wishes and welcome to all our distinguished speakers who have been gracious enough to join us for this discussion and spare their valuable time. We have an outstanding panel today, as was highlighted by Kavya, of industry veterans to share their experiences and advice with all of us on a very important topic, rebooting the Asian economy post-pandemic, expansion, challenges, and opportunities for businesses. But before we launch into today's discussion, let me take just about 3-4 minutes here to briefly set the frame for our discussion. So while it's impossible to accurately estimate what the economic losses had been globally, with the pandemic around it, but a University of Cambridge study in 2020 had stated that if pandemic was left unchecked, it will cost the global economy over $82 trillion over the next 5 years. And we have seen that the economies have been across the world, has been hit hard by the pandemic. But when we look at Asia, the picture is slightly different in Asia. And if I just give you a few pointers here, and we will discuss and debate this as we kind of move along. The world economy shrank by 3.2% in 2020. The Asian economy, on the other hand, contracted only by 1.5% there. Asian countries have also fared favorably as an investment destination. The foreign direct investment in the region has remained consistent. It dropped only by 1.3% in 2020 compared to a decline of almost 35% globally. Also, remarkably, if you look at it, the intra-ASEAN region share of trade has actually increased. It was 12% in the previous year, and now it is at 17% over there. So the trade between the region is growing around it. Also, one major development that had happened during the pandemic period is around the signing of the Rcep Agreement, which is expected to cover 30% of the global GDP and will also account for a quarter of the global trade in goods and services. A very important development that happened during this period. Now, these strong numbers are highlighting the region's economic resilience despite the pandemic and despite travel restriction majority of the time. And the travel restrictions have just started to ease out. We still have some challenges, with the COVID resurfacing as well in certain parts of the region. And when we look at the IMF's forecast for the Asia, it comes to be more optimistic than the global forecast around it. Globally, IMF is estimating that the global growth would be at 4.9%, while the Asia, it is estimated to be at 6.4%, there. So we had a better run in the previous year. And there's expectation that in the coming years also, the growth would be faster than the global growth around it there. Now, if the pandemic remains under check, we can all believe that there is a requirement, or there would be a sense of a stronger relative optimism as the countries are kind of opening again. There are a few questions that you would like to answer during this discussion as well, to say that how the growth momentum in Asia can be sustained, what the expansion strategies can be, what are the opportunities for both businesses and investors, and what are the challenges that the businesses must overcome. And with that, let me go across to our distinguished speakers to get their views as well. So, this first question is kind of open to all. And Ketan, if I may ask, to start, and then followed by Devin, Benjamin, and Maya. As we kind of, I was kind of giving away a few facts and some of the numbers around it there. So Asia has done relatively better, than the global growth around it. So I would like to know your opinion on why Asia is seeing some different results than the global side of it there. And has the economic revival been uniform across the region? Because we see that China and Japan rebounded very quickly, but the other less developed economies are facing some challenges as well there. So Ketan, over to you, followed by Devin.
Hey, thank you, Neeraj, and thanks for inviting on this esteemed panel. I think it's a great topic, and first and foremost, it's great. The numbers which you spoke about talks very clearly about Asia better placed even after the situation which the world faced over the last 18, 20 months, right? So the number speaks for itself in terms of how Asia's resiliency is much more stronger. To me, I think one of the few differentiators where Asia is showing up like this is fundamentally around few areas, is about how the demographics are in this part of the world, and how each of the countries within Asia is throwing up different kind of potential given the demographic dividend. This is a much more younger part of the world. If you really look at Asian countries, the consumption patterns in these countries are different than some of the other Western world countries. The other important area, and we can just discount pandemic for a while, but if I look at the larger Asian economy, it is also driven through a lot of infrastructural development and rapid urbanization in a lot of countries. Because with the acceleration of rapid urbanization, and also in some of the markets like India and Bangladesh, two countries specifically I can talk about, is the expansion is also into the smaller geographies of the countries, and that's really driving tremendous level of potential opportunities and growth. And lastly, I think Asia to some extent on technological innovation was relatively behind the rest of the world. And I think now it is getting into the leapfrogging of investing into a lot of infrastructure development around technical areas or any other infrastructure areas, which is driving a lot of accelerated innovation and investment. And hence the overall robustness looks very good. And to answer your other part of the question, is it uniform across the board? Answer is no, because Asia is a diverse set of countries, right? One side you have China, other you have Japan, and then you have a lot of emerging Southeast Asian countries, and then India and ASEAN countries. The relativity and the rate of growth will be different by each of the markets, but majority of the markets are showing potential of some of the trends which I spoke about. And we have ourselves envisaged this in our own business of how some of these countries have fared differently versus some of the other markets. So yeah, that is what I would open with the comments around the question which you asked.
Thanks, Ketan, for that. So clearly, Devin, if I come to you, Ketan stressed on the younger demographics around it, technology investments now getting accelerated around there. Also, in terms of the fact that consumption patterns are different, there as well. So over to you, Devin.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you, Neeraj. Thank you, Kavya, for the introduction, and thank you for having me on the panel. Well, while I agree with a lot of things which have been mentioned, I just want to add a couple of more things. If you particularly look at this part of the world, we are all entrepreneurs. So it's an entrepreneurial-based society. And when you're entrepreneurs, then your ability to adapt to technology becomes very easy. And with the demographics in the favor of Asia, you will see that in the past 2 years, first of all, I don't even remember whether now we should talk about the pandemic or we should talk about a different world order, considering there is a war going on between Russia and Ukraine. So I think most of us have forgotten the pandemic and moved on. Now, having said that, I think what has emerged is that if you look at, let's take, for example, a country like India. I think we've had 25 unicorns which have come up in pandemic. I mean, that's a remarkable achievement. We've seen a flow of money coming in like never before, particularly from the US, because the Fed they pumped in about $3 to $5 trillion. And that money was really not needed there. So it found its way into a lot of startups and into the stock markets here. So you saw a lot of buoyancy here. And we saw different kind of a growth, at least in India. The shift, sorry, I'll pause a bit. Those companies which adopted technology and were able to recognize technology across Asia grew very fast. The economies grew very fast. You could, for example, I know a lot of startups who took to marketing in a different way. So there has been a focus, there's been a shift in the way to do business. How business is done, that is shifted in the past 2 years. And therefore, that has led to, in my opinion, a higher growth in Asia than compared to Europe, which I consider particularly dead market because there is hardly any growth. And as people come out of poverty in this part of the world, the first thing is on consumption, and consumption drives growth. So those are my brief points.
Sure. Thanks, Devin. So Mayra, if I come to you, Devin added the points on the entrepreneurial spirit and also the entrepreneurial effort and focus that we have in the region, and also spoke about the New World Order. We'll discuss that as well. That's something which is a burning question. So second one, we'll take that as well. And also in terms of the fact that how the technology investments, adoption of that are changing the uptake from a economy perspective as well as from the companies which are operating in the region. Coming from the Indonesia perspective, if you can just highlight your thoughts on region as well as specifically from Indonesia as well, if you could add some perspective, that would be helpful for our audience.
Yeah. Thank you, Neeraj, and hello, everyone. In global, further facing challenge desire post-pandemic, in my opinion, in Indonesia example, the increasing of business and trade investment, increasing of investment very important to boost development in the country, also, of course, for another country also, which investment, our investment policy role as a component of national revenue income. In this point, we determine our investment in technology. Of course, we are also doing for the agricultural business also. Then we are very strong to establishment for doing investment in the type of equity funding, which this primary objective of our minority funding is to propel the growth of business, supporting for legal policy and security guarantees through to the improvement of various regulation that have been issued can create a positive effect investment climate and policy encourage transparency. In Indonesia as well, example, we challenge with desire to attract investment can also focus on a labor intensive investment, export oriented natural resources processing industry. Can help elevate of multiplier effect on the absorption of labor and increase revenue income, with the result of which can be export to increase and growth of foreign exchange in the country. Those my opinions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayra, for that. And Benjamin, if I come to you, I mean, you are coming from a country which has been the financial hub, for the region and has facilitated so much of investments all across. What are your thoughts on this?
Sure. Thank you very much. It's a privilege to be here as well. I think economic data is something that is really close to my heart. I'm an economist by training, and that's why I pay quite a bit of attention to this macro data in addition to running this business. So I think I want to fast track back 2 years back when COVID first started here in Singapore in 2020. We were hit as well. There was contraction. One of the worst hit industries was actually construction. I think we took a scale back of about 35%. But aside from construction, there was some tailwind in certain industries, as some of my panelists have also highlighted. I think industries such as tech, industries such as real estate, industries such as investment banking, all these, they grew really quickly. And fast forward to 2 years later, we now have been reported by Bloomberg. Singapore is probably one of the countries that has the fastest GDP recovery in over a decade. This is the fastest we have grown in this entire decade. And where did all this growth actually come from? It came from three major sectors. Manufacturing, it grew really quickly. It recovered from contraction. Construction rebounded. Now we are in the green again. And it looks like in the service industry, where Singapore is so well known for, as what you have highlighted, the service industry is something that we have also highlighted. But how did we get to this stage? Maybe I'll just like to share certain thoughts on that as well. I think we, as in Singapore, the government has been talking about endemic phasing, moving past the whole pandemic. We've been talking about this for almost a year. And what did we do to get to this stage? I think aside from having a strategy, we focus a lot on boosting the vaccination rates. More than 90% of our population is vaccinated. More than 90% of us are also boosted, which means that we took three injections already. In fact, today, the Singapore government has once again announced that for the elderly, the weak, the vulnerable, they are recommended to take a second booster, which is the fourth jab. So right now, what we're trying to do is that we are trying to ease the measures even further. In fact, our Prime Minister had just come up to talk today as well, because we do see that Singapore, we are a really small country. We are a really small city as compared to Indonesia, as compared to India. We do not have any resources, and we have to see flights coming in. We have to see trade going in order for Singapore to grow, in order to attract talent, in order to attract investments, in order to attract even venture tax as well. So I think this is Singapore's strategy in getting back to recovery, a good strategy, high vaccination rate, and pushing towards an endemic phase. I think we're all striving towards there, and really glad to report that next week onwards, going outside here in Singapore, we don't have to wear masks anymore. So it was such a big day here in Singapore. Today, right today, just 8 hours ago, Prime Minister announced that, in order for us to live with COVID, we must be prepared to live with COVID indoors as well as outdoors. We are really interested, and we are really looking forward to those times as well. The mood is good.
Wonderful. Great to know that. And certainly the travel restrictions are also getting eased off. So it's a big milestone, as well for Singapore country there. And for all of us as well, who know that, that Singapore continues to be the hub as well for the region investments there. So Benjamin, just, I wanted to get through the supply chain, but since you raised the point on the trading part of it there, so what are your thoughts in terms of, the fact that, Rcep has just got signed, and pandemic and some of the rising geopolitical tensions that we've seen, kind of push this into a different direction of, saying that more protectionism, more self-reliance is something which, get emphasized, for different countries, but at least for specific products around it there. So in the context of what is happening today in the new world order, as Devin had mentioned, and in the context of the Rcep, which has just got signed, there, how do you see these developments, for expanding and, making the markets more richer and more possible, for everyone?
Yeah. Self-reliance is such a tough word for Singapore, because we virtually don't have a big domestic market. We virtually rely on external factors, external parties in order to boost our trades as well. And this will continue to be the way. We cannot be closed off to the rest of the world, which is why our strategy has always been very consistent. We did not follow Hong Kong. Hong Kong took the other direction. Hong Kong closed every time there's a case. And right now they are trying to deal with COVID. Omicron is wrecking the entire economy. But Singapore decides that, rather than to close each time there's a COVID case, we open, we get people vaccinated, we treat it as living with COVID. So our strategy is a bit different from some of the other Asian counterparts as well. And I think this is working. Look at just the numbers itself, we are flourishing. But what I see is going to be a challenge moving forward is in the supply chain. I think we have seen supply chain disruption since the start of COVID. And this became quite a big issue at the start of the year when we talk about the budget 2022 of Singapore, where we had this discussion with the finance ministers as well. So this is an issue that has been brought forward several times. The cost of supply chain has increased, not 20, 30%, but we're talking about 300%. The ships are not coming up from China. They're not reaching Singapore fast enough. And Singapore being a hub to the rest of Southeast Asia, this is possibly a problem. With freight costs increasing, the rest of the things goes up as well. We're talking about inflation, we're talking about rising consumer indexes and all these kind of things. This is something that I think is really close to my heart because as some of you may understand my background, I started this company as a social enterprise 5 years ago. Why did I do it? It was started as a housekeeping company. I was working for a private equity firm, so I was doing quite okay. But one day my friend called me up. He said that, Ben, there are some workers that got retrenched, and what can we do about it? So at that time, we started this as a social enterprise, and we started providing jobs to the marginalized. We're talking about ex-offenders, persons with disabilities. So these are the bottom 10 percentile of the market. And I've always been very concerned about this group. It touches my heart quite a bit, and we see this as a problem because how does the vulnerable end up becoming more vulnerable? How do we stop this from happening as well? How do we stop them from being cycled in a cycle of poverty? I think this is another set of discussion that I really want to focus on the next part, aside from my supply chain disruptions, aside from all this, but more on the society, the societal fabric, the social compact itself. We do see in the rest of the world as well. The rich are getting richer. Those bankers and all this, they're all getting richer. The tech startups, they're all raising money like nobody's business. But those that are falling below the poverty line, they're getting worse. So how do we look at this from an inequality point of view?
That's right, and Benjamin raises some big questions on the inequality that is prevalent, and it's only kind of increasing as well on it. And we will try that, if we can get some view, from our panelists as well towards the later part of the session. But Benjamin, you raised the issue on the supply chain, and supply chain has been, from last three to 4 years, has been something which has been on the minds of the CEOs and chairmen and, boards, have been very concerned about it. Started with probably the geopolitical side of it. We had pandemic, and now we have a situation in terms of Russia-Ukraine, crisis as well there, which is also increasing it in a significant manner there in that. While companies have changed some of the approach on rebalancing, reshoring, as well as looking at the new capacity to come in different places, but still there is a significant challenge around it. Ketan, if I get you here, and Devin, your views as well on it, to say that going forward, how are businesses in the country and the region, there specifically are looking to see that, these disruptions are only increasing. So given the business that you are in, as well as your views on the technology overall as well, how this can be weathered in a more better way. Difficult one, but your take.
Yeah. So I think this is one of the biggest challenge today, and we all hear about chip shortages and semiconductor shortages, and we were badly impacted. Like as one of the leading providers of computing and printing products, it was a big challenge, and this challenge is only going to multiply because of reasons beyond pandemic. I think it was pandemic-induced challenges, but if you really look at it, there are two aspects which is really driving this. One is the geopolitical part, right? There are tensions between certain countries and certain economies, and that is driving a bit of supply chain manufacturing capabilities across different parts of the world because of the geopolitical situation. And there are countries and economies which are putting trade barriers and other ways of really not importing, but probably making them more self-reliant. So that is one aspect. But the other aspect is, given what happened in the last 2 years, if something like COVID will happen, let's say 10 years down the line in a different way, but not pandemic, but something else, what are each of the businesses prepared from a supply chain resiliency perspective? I think in our industry, in the electronics industry, one of the biggest challenges was that the supply chain ecosystem was concentrated between very few countries. So if those countries get impacted, whichever way, it could be geopolitical issues, it could be issue like COVID or any other thing, the entire supply chain gets disrupted. So how do you create that resiliency looking at different options available in front of you? It's not easy. We say that, okay, we build supply chain resiliency, but unfortunately, cost and efficiency and scale are important factors when you talk about manufacturing. And just to tell you, Indian government is making tremendous effort, and we should compliment them the way they have launched PLI schemes into 20 odd sectors, and some of the sectors have already started kicking in very well. Those are good steps, like, and I'm sure other economies are also doing something similar, but from an India perspective, I can say that is something which is working very well. In electronic sector alone, government is talking about $300 billion worth manufacturing by 2025. It's completely a new sector. Mobile phone is one of the largest manufactured goods out of India, apart from televisions, but a lot of new categories are getting enrolled into this. Now, these are great, bold vision, a great commitment, I would say, but a lot of challenges along with. And probably at some stage, I don't know, Neeraj, we'll touch upon this, but this is also dependent on things like ease of doing business, or how each of the countries are really making it easy for global corporations to deal with in specific countries, because eventually you will not be able to do self-reliance by dependent on your own ecosystem. You can have consumption within large economies like India, but you will need to get global might and technological transfers in order to really make you manufacturing maybe one of the alternatives of manufacturing ecosystem. So I think it's a complex topic, great start, I would say, in a market like India, but this is what will only continue to grow as we believe things are. And you rightly touched upon, Neeraj, that this is probably, if you ask me, among the top 5 issues which any board must be solving for any company, irrespective of the sector, this will be definitely one of them.
Sure. Thanks, Ketan, for that. And Devin, coming to you, while you answer it, if you can also touch upon the fact that as governments across the world try and give incentive subsidization in certain form for these areas, is it leading to more inefficiency, more challenge of duplicate capacity getting created as well there with respect to these incentives that are being rolled out around it there. So while you answer it, please do add some perspective on that as well.
Yeah, sure. Neeraj, thank you very much. So, taking on from what Benjamin said, I just want to add one thing to Benjamin saying. The divide, as he said, the rich will keep getting richer and the poor will keep getting poorer. I think that's a given. I mean, you and I, we can't change that. But what can change is the ability of governments to change the policies they have within a particular country to adapt to its local requirement, like what India has done. And I must agree with Ketan. I must compliment the government of India for doing a fabulous job, what they've been doing in the past 3, 5, 6, 7 years. That's one. I think what we will also see going forward, and I'm not touching about logistics or anything else because that has already been covered, is that new forms of businesses will emerge. Companies will have to reinvent themselves. I mean, it's going to be mind-blowing. In the past 1 year, I have got the opportunity, and I'm actually obsessed with this whole idea about metaverse, cryptos, the new age industries which are coming in, and how to use technologies for this, how to bring in transparencies. So I think as we go in the next couple of years, we will see a change in world order in terms of businesses. Now, if you look at our renewable energy, clean business, if I may touch upon energy, which is very, very important for a country like India, energy security. I don't have an answer tomorrow. If you ask me if the oil crosses $125 a barrel, what will happen to a lot of smaller economies in Europe may disappear, or there may be a serious issue or challenges. As Benjamin, Ketan both said, there would be massive inflation. Now, what is the counter to that? I have no answer to that. I don't think anybody on this panel has an answer to that because we don't know what is going to happen. What was going to happen? I think exactly 2 years ago, 2 days before this, we had our first lockdown in India. That was around 21st, 22nd or something like that. So how the world is going to change in the next year and a half, 2 years is just guesstimates. But what we can do, given the resources today, how we can best utilize it to change our businesses and adapt to what we think is going to happen in the future will derive success, will also be a driver for growth. And when there is growth, there is employment generation. And when there's employment generation, then Benjamin's question gets answered. There is more wealth, which is being given to more people in the triangle, at the bottom of the triangle. They will start making more money because somebody, if there is a manufacturing growth, and there's a new factory which is set up, as you know, in India, there is what we call, Benjamin, a small restaurant called a dhaba comes up, a repair shop comes up. So entrepreneurs come around those facilities. So if consumption is taking place in this country, and I'm particularly talking about India because I don't have experience about Indonesia, Vietnam, etc., you would see that the consumption is here. You would see that the world will start pouring in more money to set up manufacturing here. And if there is manufacturing here, therefore there is growth, and therefore there is consumption and a reward to people who've invested in that manufacturing. And I think the biggest changer in years to come in 4 industries, I just want to leave it on the table, is infrastructure, the whole thing of metaverse, cryptos, etc. coming in, energy. I mean, just imagine, Neeraj, what an EV will do to India. And the sooner we do it, better for us, because 85% of our imports is oil. And therefore, the sooner we can do and scale it up, that will drive down the cost of battery, which is the storage cost. And therefore, it becomes much easier for the country to adopt it. And that will lead to new generation of jobs, in fact, more jobs than we even anticipate today. So my whole thing is that we've really got to, there is a change in mindset. People have learned in the past 2 years, but in the next 2-3 years, what happens will be determined in the events in the next 45 days to 2 months. And if things get stabilized and we are able to find a balance, especially India with its oil bill coming down, and we're able to control inflation, it's a growth driver. And I mean, I remember the earlier Prime Minister Manmohan Singh always said that there has to be inflation for growth. Maybe that's the way forward, probably.
Sure, Devin. Thanks for that. And the fact that you second guessed my question, which would have been to you for the price increase that is happening in the oil barrel, and we were amongst all that are there in this panel today. I mean, the magic answer would have come from you. So let me ask you another question. Here, from what Benjamin raised, the point on the inequality side of it, I think the impact of any major change on the SMEs is also disproportionately higher compared to what it is, for a larger business around it. And since in the region, we know that, that 50% of the workforce and almost 95% plus of the businesses are SME businesses in the ASPAC region around it there. So how do you see this, that the fact that the digitization is happening, the fact that, there is a lot more support being given to SMEs through various government methods as well around it. How do you see this happening, getting accelerated by the pandemic and the other situations around it? Is it now making them more supportive and more, getting into mainstream in the economy?
Neeraj, that's a brilliant question, actually. Really, it's a fantastic question. And I'll start by giving an example. 6-7 years ago, Piyush Goyal was our Honorable Minister for Renewable Energy. And I happened to travel with him. And LED bulbs revolution started in India. Now, I'll just give the audience and you an example. One LED bulb, those days, it would cost 650 rupees to 1,000 rupees. So, he's a chartered accountant. So he did some maths and he actually said, let's go ahead and order 500 million LED bulbs. Guess what happened? The price of LED bulbs came from 700-800 rupees to 39 rupees. And it gave people the incentive to set up manufacturing in India to make LED bulbs. Now, I have interacted with a lot of SMEs around the world. One thing which a country like India offers is scale. And therefore, you have some excellent technology, which is lying in Indonesia, Singapore, United Kingdom, SMEs, but they are unable to scale the product, and therefore bring the price down because they don't have a market. The markets are saturated. But for SMEs to survive, overseas SMEs can collaborate with SMEs in India. That's one way to improve technology here. Alternatively, as manufacturing grows, especially we'll see a lot of growth in the defense and the schemes the government of India has announced in renewable energy as well. There will be an opportunity for SMEs to come around and become feeder to that particular industry. Yes, past 2 years, SMEs had it very, very tough. But, if you even go look at MSMEs today, and I'll give you another example. If you look at which businesses have grown, and I've been a privy to this study, imagine a woman making, Benjamin, for your benefit, a pickle in some part of India, which was a household being distributed in that particular area. Let's pick up East UP, for example. Today, with change in technology, she has been able to put her homemade pickle on Instagram or on Amazon or on Flipkart and make it possible for her to deliver that product anywhere else. Now, if we just look at this scale of delivery or logistics, technology has been able to resolve these logistics. So MSMEs and SMEs, a lot of SMEs, especially in sectors not really into plant and machinery, but in any other sector, have been able to do much better in the pandemic than others, because they were able to create a market. And I know companies which have doubled their turnover in the past 2 years from nothing, just using technology to their advantage. So my state is that if we are able to bring logistics by using technology and by providing finance to them through an app, and Neeraj, that is happening today all over India and all over the world. The SME sector is better placed, and the cost of doing business for SME sector has always been the cost of finance. If we are able to bring down the cost of finance for the SME sector, then it's a totally different game, because that is what I can borrow at 8%. Sorry, these figures are very high as compared to world standards. But an SME has to borrow at 14, 15%, 16%. But if we are able to bring that delta down, we make them more efficient. That's a game changer.
And I would add, Devin, sorry, Neeraj, I think I fully echo what Devin is saying, because I think the leapfrogging of SMEs, especially in the last 24 months, is immense. We are in the tech space. I can tell you that the kind of innovation which we have seen in terms of tech adoption, which generally takes 5 to 6 years, has merely happened in 12 months.
No, absolutely. And I think there was a study also which said that that almost if the 60 million plus businesses if they get into digitized mode, there'll be almost like a $200 billion we could add to the GDP of the country by 2024. So I think Ketan, are you there now?
Yeah. Can you hear me? Is it?
Sorry, you got disrupted for a few seconds, so just added a fact there. I think when you answer it, just if you can add, a couple of quick points on some of the challenges also which are there in creating such kind of digital infrastructure, because that's something which again a very big enabler and disabler as well. The current time.
Ketan, before you answer, I just want to add, one more point, Neeraj. Sorry to butt in. I think those. I just want to add 10 seconds. Those SMEs will succeed who have a vision to create wealth. If they have a vision to create wealth, they will succeed. If they run a normal mom and pop store where they want to, if I am bold enough to say it on screen, is that they are more interested in increasing their pocket money, then those businesses will fail.
And I'll add to that, and that businesses which will have realization that you need to build intelligence to navigate and reach customers more efficiently and with personalized and customized solutions, and that's the power of technology. And you were talking about it, like 68 million SMEs in India are still not digitized. Imagine the mom and pop stores, which we are talking about, which drives economy at the last final year in this country, they are all ready to now get e-commerce ready, to be omni-channel ready. They may be connected to a JioMart, or they may be connected to a Tata Click, or they may be connected to Big Basket or wherever. But if they don't have that vision of expanding their horizon from their cluster, their city, their state, country, and even global, I think that the limit is not there. And I think the other area which is very exciting for us also, and we have learned this, that countries like India are also becoming economies for freelancers, right? This is one of the largest freelancer market, and that's also opening up tremendous level of economic growth opportunities. So one has to have a vision which is much broader. And I fully agree what Devin has said, that in terms of what is your vision, because you just can't, otherwise general SME has a very, very, very narrow thinking that I have to earn for today or to this month and then move on and stuff like that. So as you do that, and we have seen that companies have tremendously innovated themselves, adopted new tools, adopted complex things which they've never heard of, cloud, new applications, making sure that they are connected in the e-commerce world and driving a true omni-channel experiences. These are great examples of how they'll be able to do. One more point to make sure that the success happens, and I think that is one area where India kind of market has to do a much better job, is about skilling people. Because as the way things are moving towards more digitized world, I think the way skilling is still requires a massive level of a turnaround, so that we are able to bring in right level of skills for the future workforce. And I think to me, that is going to be one of the most important success factors. They have a very thin workforce, but the workforce has to be very, very skilled. And I think that's one area where they need to really focus on.
Sure. So, Benjamin, I'll come to you just in a couple of minutes there. And Mayra, if I come to you first, and let me say, Benjamin, while you think about from the SME perspective and the digital divide that is there right now, how that can be filled, if you could also think about, Ketan raised the point earlier in the discussion on ease of doing business, and Singapore set standard, for helping the companies to set up businesses quicker, as well as from an operation perspective as well. So if you could think on that, while I come to you, Mayra, your thoughts on, from a coming from a business council perspective, your thoughts on the SMEs that could be there operating in Indonesia, what is being done for them, and how that acceleration can happen for their integration into global value chains.
Thank you. I fully agree with all panelists about how digitalization for SME will be increase of the growth economy. Of course, that an Indonesia example, we are supporting for the SME, like digitalization from the minority investor investment is like very helpful for the technology for e-commerce, selling, trading, and then exporting to others like Jordan and all Asia also. That's important in our country also. I think that's important for us also for how to protect of the SME as a minority of investment. This depend on the regulation, but with the strong regulations, if a change policy to protect minority investment, that's very, very helpful for increase of the economic in the growth economic, and then also very helpful for their people to the start of business, like startup and others business sectors. Example for Indonesia with Jordan, we are starting make it like a program for the digitalization with the trading export. We make like a technology for trading e-commerce that it's starting. Then also we like to make a business to business trade e-commerce system that's very helpful for this time. During pandemic, we also we still have Indonesia exporting to Jordan is still surplus. That's very helpful, and that's this our example. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayra. Benjamin, over to you.
I think from Singapore's point of view, I think our government has set certain gold standards in terms of growing our businesses as well. Because I think primarily the entire demographics of Singapore businesses is that 99% of our businesses are SMEs, right? And this 99% actually accounts for 70% of all employment here in Singapore. So it does make good sense for the government to focus a bit more on growing and developing our local SMEs. There are two portions to this, because I think that there are some industries that that did not do so well during COVID, and of course there are some industries that did better. So I think that the government's focus comes in from two prongs. One of them is to revitalize certain of these industries that weren't doing so well. On the other hand, there's also the scaling of the other sides of business. I think we talk about building of business capabilities, building of human capitals. We're talking about ease of loans, ease of financial, the cost of finance, as what my colleague here has mentioned, business recovery. And I think one more important aspect here that the Singapore government has really focused on for the next 10 years is the focus in sustainability, the focus in the green economy. I think that's how we set ourselves apart from the rest of the countries in the region as well. It's because of the initiative to green Singapore's businesses, to green Singapore's industry, tap on green growth, and of course, equip our workers to take advantage of green technology and practices. I think Devin is one of the parties that it will be very interested in embarking on something like that, making partnerships with Singapore SMEs to take advantage, full advantage on how we grow the green economy. We look at supply chains disruption because of oil. We all know that electric vehicles is the way to go. It's only a push in that direction. Singapore is, of course, wants to be at the forefront of this entire movement as well. For example, my own company, I think we are one of the beneficiaries in this aspect. Our 5 years of milestones, our work plan for 5 years. During COVID, we received some support, and this 5 years was actually done, compressed into 18 months. The milestones, we met all of them in 18 months. Why? Because of tech, because of innovation, because we focus a lot on the green economy as well. So that's some of the ways and that's some of the strategies that we have to take forward in order to expand as an SME and in order to grow overseas as well. I think that's another next step and next challenge that for us in Singapore, we have to face because our domestic market is just too small.
Thanks, Benjamin. There. So we are towards the last 5-6 minutes of our panel there. Given the time constraint, and we've got, it's a very wide topic. So let us try that. I'll come to you, Devin and Ketan, for just quick points on a couple of specific questions on that. So Devin, if I start with you, you've all been speaking about the fact that to reduce the dependence on fossil fuels, and that then we have seen that governments have been trying to see that there can be new sources of revenue, as well as the fact that there can be disincentivization as well on that. So Indonesia, like for example, has introduced a carbon tax. There. What's your, let's say, 2 or 3 points that you would like to say from for introduction of such kind of measures on from a government's perspective there?
So I think that's in the right direction. I think every country owes it to their citizens to become more dependent on renewables and not so dependent on fossil fuels. You cannot wish away fossil fuels in the next couple of years. They're there to stay. That's a matter of fact. I think companies, corporates are now realizing that they have to go for voluntary carbon reduction, and therefore they've adopted the policy of sustainable development goals to make themselves net zero. Now, in case they cannot do it themselves, for example, cement plant cannot become net zero, they would then invest in a renewable energy facility or fund somebody else or buy their carbon credits or the voluntary credits to put in their balance sheet that they've contributed towards climate change. So all these are excellent measures. And I think there are huge amount of opportunity in this sector, which is running into trillions of dollars now. And that's there to stay. COP26 was successful. COP27 is in, I think, Egypt this year. And we do expect more commitments.
Sure. Ketan, if I come to you, we spoke earlier in the discussion on supply chain disruptions, then when you look at and also the fact that, ASEAN region, Asian region continues to be a favorable investment destination as well there. So if you were to look at and suggest that, that from a new investment, if a company is making, we always used to consider issues around taxation, issues around costing, there, and now they've got more addition of supply chain issues as well and geopolitical side of it there. So if you were to look at this and suggest that what would be are there like say new deal breakers or are there new deal makers, which have been added onto your prioritization as a board or as a chief officer when you're looking at an investment decision there, or what a company should look at?
Yeah, I think this is one of the biggest topics that while India also is offering right now a lot of incentives to come and manufacture, one of the challenges which country like India, Singapore is a great example. I worked there and I know the kind of transparent, consistent policies they have. A country like India has to learn two things. Irrespective of the government, irrespective of which government comes, the policies has to be stable and predictable. Because imagine when a company is putting a huge kind of investment into any country, you especially in sectors like manufacturing, green energy, whatever, they are 30-year, 50-year investments. And with policy changes beyond taxation is definitely a big topic, but it requires a clear thought process in terms of how you will deal with that. So that is number one. Number two is from running compliances approvals to a single window clearances. A complex country and a complex government setup with multiple departments or ministries having their own individual processes versus a single window clearances is going to be very critical. And I must say that there is a tremendous work done. So I'm not saying that the work is not done. DPIIT and Invest India, for example, has initiated some commendable steps in the direction like e-Madhyam. And India as a nation is taking giant strides in digitization, in public-facing policies. So I think there are some good steps taken. The confidence needs to be there now in terms of making sure that we are stable, predictable. And then last is eventually any country will get local investments for domestic consumption. But if you want to be an export-oriented economy, then your taxation and policies has to be best in class, because we are fighting with other parts of the world, which offers you a better taxation and better way of dealing with it. So to me, these are some of the contours, and I'm very happy that the current government is aware of this. We have not seen the kind of engagement on ease of doing business ever, the way it has been seen in the last few years. So if this kind of focus remains, there will be definitely a lot of things coming in terms of the investment profile in this country.
Great. So we have Kavya already here. We are absolutely towards the end of our discussion, but I will just ask just one. If you were to summarize, the last year, or if you were to talk about this year in just one word or two words, it's to all of you. What comes to your mind there? Starting with you, Ketan, Devin, Mayra, and Benjamin.
Grit. I would say one word is grit. I think the way people have had that kind of commitment has navigated everything.
Wonderful. Devin?
I think optimism. Future is highly good. I'm highly optimistic and excited.
Mayra?
I think the same with all. We hope endemic, and then the future will be increase of the opportunity challenges for our business and going up growth.
Benjamin?
My word will be travel. I really hope to reconnect with everyone overseas as well.
Certainly. My word's freedom for this. So wonderful. Great to have all of you here. I think it's been a great discussion. We did cover various topics, navigated through some of the challenges that we face by the region, as well as some of the positives around it. This is such a big region with so much of diversity. Not possible to get covered within an hour or less than an hour around it, but I think all of you did a fantastic job to provide your views and to share and come with your experience as well. So thank you very much again there, and thanks very much, Kavya, for organizing.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you to all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Neeraj, and thank you to all the panelists. Throughout the entire discussion, I was managing to serpentine myself from the flow of thoughts coming in from each of our speakers here. And Neeraj, thank you for beautifully moderating it. And all the amazing thoughts we were gathering, I think it was nothing short of a masterclass. I'm being very honest about it. So thank you so much for sharing all your insights with us. And thank you for joining us at the conclave.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I believe we managed to have some wonderful takeaways in terms of the kind of challenges, of course, that are there, but also the kind of positives, and especially for the SMEs, what's in store for them, and creating that kind of vision for that matter, if I have to take the words from all of our speakers so far. So if that's the case, I hope you're also going ahead and sharing those thoughts using hashtag #ETABLC. With that, we are about to begin our next session, our next presentation, so stay with us, and we are about to bring our next speaker on board, so stay with us. We'll get the session started in just a minute.